Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we've got a story that really got me thinking. It's about Keanu Reeves, and you know him, right? The actor.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, he ends up in this really awkward situation at his new luxury condo. And it just makes you wonder about appearances and how quick we are to judge people.
It's so true. You just never know.
Okay, so try to picture this.
Mm-hmm.
It's sunset in California, like perfect golden hour light, and Keanu's pulling up to the gate of his brand new condo. It's a really high-end place, lots of money.
Gotcha.
And he's on his motorcycle, a Norton Commando 961 classic bike, beautiful machine.
Nice.
And Keanu, he's dressed casually, t-shirt, jeans, like someone who's just out for a ride and enjoying the evening.
Makes sense.
But here's where it gets a little strange. The security guard at the gate, he immediately seems suspicious. Like he can't believe that Keanu belongs there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He actually asks Keanu straight up, "Do you live here?"
Like he can't imagine it.
Yeah, exactly. And the way he says it, it's like he's got this image in his head of what a resident in a building like that should look like. And Keanu, on his bike, just doesn't fit the mold.
I've totally been there.
So Keanu, being Keanu, he just calmly tells the guard his name and offers to show his ID. But the guard, I swear, he hesitates like he doesn't recognize the name and says something like, "Can you prove it? You don't exactly look like someone who lives here."
Wow, just judging a book by its cover.
Right. And Keanu, he's so patient through this whole thing. He even offers to show the guard his lease agreement, like any proof he needs. But the guard's stuck on his initial assessment.
I can already feel the awkwardness.
Oh, it gets worse. The guard even starts making these little comments about Keanu's motorcycle, saying stuff like, "That's not the kind of bike we see around here."
It's like he's trying to put Keanu in his place or something.
Right. And what's amazing is that Keanu keeps his cool.
Yeah.
He even tells the guard he understands he's just doing his job, but insists that he really does live there.
He's handling it way better than I would.
Totally. So the guard finally calls management to check, but Keanu's name isn't in the system yet. Probably just a delay. But of course, this just makes the guard even more suspicious.
Typical.
It's like he's looking for any reason to confirm his initial judgment. And that's when things start to really escalate.
Oh.
Yeah. The guard's suspicion, it turns into hostility.
Mm-hmm.
He starts making these personal comments about Keanu's appearance, questioning his clothes, his bike, the whole deal. He even says something like, "People who live in this condo, they don't show up on bikes like that."
Seriously, he said that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's almost funny how badly he misjudges Keanu. But it's also kind of unsettling, because this is when the guard decides to do something that just blows the whole situation way out of proportion.
You know what you do?
He called the police. Can you believe it?
You're kidding.
Nope. He calls the police on Keanu Reeves, claims he's refusing to leave, causing a disturbance, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, wow. He
Yeah.
really took it there.
I know, it's a total overreaction. And now we've got police showing up, lights flashing. It's got to be pretty surreal for Keanu, right? Standing in front of his own home, being treated like he doesn't belong.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
We'll find out what happens when those police officers arrive right after a quick break.
I'm on the edge of my seat already.
Stay tuned. So the police roll up, lights flashing. It's got to be a little strange for Keanu, right? Like you're standing in front of your own place and suddenly you've got cops there.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Naturally, the police ask him for ID, which he obviously has no problem providing, purchase agreement, his driver's license, the whole shebang.
Makes you wonder if the guard's starting to feel a little uncomfortable at this point.
Oh, I'd say so. The officers look over everything, and it's clear the guard's story is falling apart.
Karma, I guess.
And as if things couldn't get any more awkward for the guard, guess who shows up?
Who?
The condo administrator.
Mm.
And you can just tell. He immediately recognizes Keanu.
Oh, no.
Yeah, big time. He's super embarrassed, apologizes like crazy, explaining there was some kind of delay updating their system, which is why Keanu's name wasn't showing up.
I bet the guard is shrinking right about now.
Right. But Keanu being Keanu, he doesn't just let it slide. He very politely points out that the issue isn't just the system messing up, it's how he was treated.
He's totally right.
The administrator gets it too. He actually publicly calls out the guard right there, emphasizing how important it is to treat all residents with respect, no matter what they look like.
Good for him.
Now here's where things take a really interesting turn. Keanu, despite this whole mess, he decides to use this as a teaching moment.
What do you mean?
Instead of demanding the guard get fired or something, he calls a meeting with all the residents and staff.
Wow, that's unexpected.
I know, right? And in this meeting, he talks about how important it is to treat everyone with respect. give people the benefit of the doubt.
That's a powerful message.
He even shares some of his own experiences with being judged unfairly, making the point that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity.
It's true. We've all been there in some way.
Then he turns to the security guard and says something like, I hope you learn from this. It's not about rules and protocols, it's about how you treat people.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like he turned this negative experience into something positive.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah,
About how we all have these biases and how they can really affect how we treat other people.
totally. And it makes you wonder how often things like this happen to people who aren't famous, like Keanu.
That's a good point. We don't always hear about those stories.
So we've got this incredible story about Keanu Reeves, the security guard, and it sparked all these important conversations. But the question is, what can we actually do with this information? How do we take this from an interesting story to something that changes the way we interact with the world?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one thing to recognize these issues, but actually changing our own behavior, that's where the real work begins.
Okay, so we've got this whole story about Keanu and the guard, and it's got us thinking about biases, right? But what do we actually do about it? How do we take this from just like an interesting anecdote and actually make it mean something in our own lives?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? It's easy to look at the guard and say, wow, he messed up. But we've all got biases, you know.
Ouch.
The real challenge is recognizing them in ourselves and figuring out how to not let them control us.
So where do we even begin? It feels kind of overwhelming, you know? Like, how do you change something that's so ingrained?
Well, I think the first step is just being aware. Like next time you meet someone new, pay attention to those first impressions that pop into your head. What are you assuming about them based on like their clothes or how they talk or even just what they look like?
Oh, that's a good point. It's like slowing down our reactions and actually thinking about where they're coming from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once you've kind of noticed that initial judgment, ask yourself, okay, is this based on actual facts or am I just relying on stereotypes?
Yeah, it's like we have to check ourselves, right? Make sure we're not just jumping to conclusions.
Totally. And if you're finding it hard to see past that first impression, try putting yourself in their shoes for a second. Like, what might their life have been like? What experiences might have shaped who they are?
That's such a good point. It's like a reminder to be more understanding and less judgmental, you know?
And it's not just about what we think, it's also about what we say. Our words can carry so much baggage without us even realizing it. Like, are you using language that reinforces stereotypes? Could what you're saying come across as disrespectful, even if you don't mean it that way?
Like in the story with the guard, right? All those little comments about what people like you do and don't do. It's like those words reveal a whole lot about his assumptions, even if he didn't say them directly.
Exactly. So by paying attention to the words we use, we can actually create a more welcoming and inclusive environment. It's like a constant process of checking ourselves and learning and trying to do better.
You know, what really stands out to me about Keanu in this whole thing is that he didn't just let it slide. He spoke up, not just for himself, but for everyone who might be treated that way, you know?
Yeah, that's huge. It's so easy to just walk away when something like that happens, but he used his voice to call it out.
But speaking up can be so hard, right? Especially when you're going against what everyone else seems to think.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It takes courage. But even small things can make a difference. Like if you hear someone saying something prejudiced, don't be afraid to challenge them. Or if you see someone being treated unfairly, offer support.
It's like those little acts of kindness, right? Like a smile or just listening to someone can actually go a long way in creating a more inclusive atmosphere.
Totally. And we can push for bigger changes too, you know? Supporting organizations that are fighting discrimination, advocating for laws that promote equality, things like that.
You know, this story, even though it's about a celebrity, it really hit home. It's like a reminder that we're all susceptible to these biases and they can have real consequences.
Definitely. But it also shows us that even when faced with prejudice, we can choose to respond with grace and understanding. And who knows, maybe that can inspire others to do the same.
Like Keanu did, right? He turned a negative experience into an opportunity for growth. It's a powerful message about the impact we can have, even if we don't think we have a lot of influence.
For sure. By being aware of our biases, calling out injustice when we see it, and choosing to be kind in our daily lives, we can all play a part in building a more just and equitable world.
This deep dive has given us a lot to think about, wouldn't you say? Hopefully it's inspired all of us to examine our own biases and consider how we can make a positive difference in our own communities. Thanks for listening, everyone.